Have you ever looked forward to buying a painting or a poster for a long time? Like, you really picked out the place on your wall and found a really nice frame, took your time, saved up, and then you finally hang that painting, and then you notice the way that it sits is just slightly crooked, so that whenever you look at the picture, you think to yourself, wow, I love this picture. If only there was a way to make it a little level and perfect. But no matter what you do, there's just a little bit teeny off. That's been my experience of completing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, a new Metroidvania from Ubisoft Montpellier.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is an exciting time for anyone who's never played a Prince of Persia game before. The fact that it's a Metroidvania is very interesting and very exciting, considering what it's been inspired by. Things like different anime like Dragon Ball Z, to games like Hollow Knight, or even other types of Metroidvanias. Of course, Castlevania and Metroid themselves. So today, I'm excited to take a look at Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Going backwards in time, last summer I was fortunate enough to visit the Ubisoft Montpellier office and interview some members of the production team about the making of this game. And from the very first conversation I had, it was clear to me that the developers had put their heart and soul into not just a new Prince of Persia story, but an interpretation of Middle Eastern myths and legends that felt fresh and exciting. After playing a couple of early stage demos, I felt that Ubisoft Montpellier had something special on their hands. They even made a point of calling out that The Lost Crown was being developed for the Nintendo Switch in mind, so they were aiming for rock-solid frame rates and minimal load times, even though the Switch is definitely showing its age at this point. When the trailer dropped early in summer of 2023, the reactions from people in general seemed kind of mixed. To me, it seemed like what people were mad about was that this wasn't the long-awaited Sands of Time remake that people have been hoping for more information about. But as someone who actually played the game pre-trailer, I felt like I was holding on to a secret of how good this game was going to be. Again, zooming back to the initial trailer drop, I think that it does its job and shows off the vibe The Lost Crown is going for. This game draws inspiration from anime, fighting games, and mythology in a really intriguing way. Yeah, the main character Sargon has a little of that modern cool character edginess, but it totally works in-game. The story itself instantly drew me in, though by the end of completion I felt like it had lost a lot of its steam. Players are thrusted into the action right away. You control Sargon the Immortal, the newest member of a band of heroes under the command of the Queen. Each of the 7 immortals has special abilities, kind of like the Avengers of ancient Persia, if you will. After a quick tutorial battle and some conversation with important NPCs, the action kicks off. Prince Hassan is kidnapped right from under the Immortals' nose and spirited away to the sacred Mount Kaf. The Immortals give chase, but once they reach Mount Kaf, things go awry almost instantly. Pretty soon, Sargon, Hassan, and everyone else is caught up in an epic tale of murder and conspiracy. The main characters are trying to do what they think is right, which has ramifications for all of Persia. Now, this may sound like a story that could be told in about a 90-minute movie or so, but this Prince of Persia game is stretched out over about 30 to 50 hours if you're going to go full completionist. At least in my experience. And it is barely linear, because unlike being a straightforward tale of adventure like the Sands of Time, this is a 2D Metroidvania, with all the genre trappings that invokes. And this isn't a game that can be fully completed in just a few hours like Super Metroid. This game is pretty massive, for better and worse. I was genuinely shocked at how much the map had expanded by the end of my time with The Lost Crown. It's almost comical how gigantic Mount Kaf feels once all is said and done. Every new location introduces new gimmicks and enemies, and Sargon himself gains several new traversal abilities by the end of the game. At first, you're just jumping and slashing and sliding, but by the end of the game, you're air dashing, raining down arrows, and straight up teleporting around the map. There is a heavy emphasis on really satisfying customizable combat. Sargon can equip amulets, which functions like charms in Hollow Knight. Each amulet costs a certain amount of slots, and most if not all of them can be upgraded with found currency. By the end of the game, you're definitely going to have your preferences and different build options that are totally all viable. But The Lost Crown isn't just about fighting your way through a large map and piecing together a story. There are dozens of collectibles to find. Every location has chests to open, sand jars to knock over, Xerxes coins to collect, and puzzles to solve. Sargon does have different skins to unlock, and there are side quests to complete that span the entire map. Since I completed the game on PlayStation 5, I had 35 trophies to contend with, on top of the in-game completion percentage that slowly ticked up the more that I did. To say the least, this is a game absolutely packed with stuff to do. Fortunately, The Lost Crown was made with accessibility in mind. Even players who get lost easily or don't vibe with the combat can tweak settings to find a way to play this game. I messed around with easy mode, hard mode, guided mode, a little bit of everything, just to see if the game felt different in each mode. and the changes are noticeable. It is toggleable, so it's not that big of a deal. I ended up completing this game on a customized setting that was a little bit between normal and hard. Even if you lower all the settings to be as easy as possible, this game still has a full-fledged completion experience that will take a long time. But something about this game's design lowers the overall effect of these elements. Taken individually, on its own, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has some of the best feeling platforming and strongest 2D combat I've experienced in recent memory. But in the context of the entire game, I found that the whole was actually less than the sum of its parts. One of the main currencies in the Lost Crown is time crystals. These special glowing shards dictate what you can purchase and upgrade, and are even used to get hints from Fariba, an NPC who knows more than she lets on. Even outside of the time crystals, everyone stuck on Mount Kaf struggles with time. They are trapped in time loops or aging too quickly, and are otherwise pushed and pulled by the whimsy of other time shenanigans. The longer I spent completing the game, the more I was struck by the idea that time is the most valuable resource. And even though I think The Lost Crown is a fun game, almost close to being an all-time great, I couldn't help but feel that occasionally the game was not respecting my time. Sometimes I mean this literally. This is a game that is just undercooked enough that is absolutely full of bugs. Most won't even register to the average player or are infrequent enough that you can quickly forget about them. But completionists have to acknowledge that some bugs are downright game-breaking, and that can be detrimental to the overall experience. Having a bug that causes the game to crash or forces the player to reset is a waste of time, and that can be heartbreaking. Now, I'm holding out hope that by the time you're seeing this or completing this game for yourself, that these have all been patched or smoothed out or otherwise completely fixed. I can only speak from my personal experience, and I gotta say, some of these bugs were downright frustrating. There's an amulet players can get for purchasing the deluxe edition of the game called the Prosperity Bird. It doesn't take up a slot, so you can have it on for almost the entire game. It almost serves as an accessibility feature in that it is supposed to signal by tweeting to the player the little bird noises when there's a hidden treasure nearby. Now, I use this bird because I thought it would help me with the completion process. Uncovering all the hidden secrets is kind of my thing, and it makes it more optimized. But I swear to God, this bird was bugged for as long as I had it equipped. Even after finding everything possible in an area, this bird would still tweet and make noise. It was more of an annoying inconvenience than anything totally game-breaking. But I did spend more time combing through certain areas for additional collectibles, even though I had found them all according to the map, because this damn bird wouldn't shut up. But there were definitely more serious bugs, which actually made me lose progress. There's one side quest involving an NPC who asks Sargon to help him track down pieces of the moon. Once I found the NPC, a little cutscene took place, and then I couldn't move Sargon afterwards. The game hadn't frozen, animations were still happening, the music was still going, but Sargon wouldn't respond to any button inputs. Turns out I had to turn the controller off and on again. Nothing major. But it wasn't enough for me to make considering restarting the game just in case. Talking to other people, especially Switch players, this is apparently a known bug that can crash the game, so be advised. Here's the thing, these are minor nitpicks. But the fact that I'm making them at all kind of bums me out, because The Lost Crown is totally stacked in so many other ways. Yes, the graphics glitch occasionally, there's some dithering and moments where animation effects lingered on screen instead of disappearing, enemies reacting and behaving at lower frames per second, but little stuff like that doesn't ultimately take away from what the game does very well. If this new Prince of Persia entry was just an ever-increasing series of challenge rooms to complete, with the same control scheme and sense of style, it'd probably be one of my favorite games. If it was just a straightforward 2D platformer with this fully fleshed out combat system, I'd say it's phenomenal. These elements are so well executed that I had to give the developers a hand here. This game is a masterclass in smooth movement when you're not hitting a bug. Sargon's speed is just right, perfectly tuned to feel fast and responsive. The way the challenges are designed, you can glance right at the screen and know exactly what to do. And once you execute the moves, you kind of feel like a god. There are a couple specific types of challenges that I want to call to attention. Every biome on the map has 4 main things to find and pick up: chests, lore items, sand jars, and Xerxes coins. Pretty much all of these are hidden behind some kind of challenge. Maybe a chest, maybe behind a hidden wall, a lore item that can't be picked up until you defeat a few waves of difficult enemies. Speaking of which, the coins end up really pushing you to your limits. If you're going to complete the game, you must collect all 47 Xerxes coins so you can purchase and upgrade every amulet in the game. Now, these floating coins are often cleverly placed in a room full of spikes or over bottomless pits. You have to use a combination of all of your skills to pick them up. The tricky part is that you must do more than just make it to the coin. You then have to bring it back to a stable ground without dying. It's like the strawberries from Celeste, and it's awesome. And you can't just use your magical teleporting powers to cheat your way through it. You have to do it legit. As a guy who loves momentum and expression via platforming games, I can confidently say that moving through the spaces as Sargon is genuinely pleasurable. There's this blissful feeling of flow that I was happy to sink into. Of course, with the good comes the annoying, and sometimes the rewards for these amazing movement challenges or finding a chest made me feel like I was wasting my time. For instance, some of these puzzles or movement challenges I spent an hour or so on, mastering the most complex movement pattern possible that the game could throw at me. And the reward was either a weird skin in a chest, which I'll never complain about, or a handful of these items called memory shards, which let you take screenshots of the game and pin them to the in-game map for later on. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a genius idea, and honestly, I hope every game starts to implement something like this going forward. It is extremely empowering to come across a locked door or otherwise gated progression, snap a picture of it to reference it later on, and move on with my life until I found the double jump or whatever skill I got. But it feels kind of backwards to make these shards a limited resource, especially when this is touted as an accessibility feature. It's even more insulting to be in the late game when I've already unlocked most of the special abilities, and to find a hidden chest with more memory shards is weird. Just a strange reward. I would have happily taken an interesting amulet or even a unique lore collectible item instead. Goes without saying, but I have played a lot of games in this genre. I was surprised at how the Lost Crown made things like a double jump or air dash feel new and exciting. These abilities tie into the world building, and that's another point in this game's favor. The storytelling and the writing is pretty well done. I don't think it's as well implemented as it could be, but what's on page here is pretty great. Sargon and the Immortals are really well characterized, and I was along for the journey the whole time through. But then, through some plot contrivances, Sargon is pretty much by himself the entire game. Now, I understand why they did that. It makes Mount Kaf feel more mysterious and imposing, but I found myself wanting a bit more back and forth with the Immortals, especially when certain plot beats happened and I struggled to remember the last time I even saw that character. Sorry, Neith, I haven't seen you for about 17 hours, and I'm having a hard time remembering you. I do like the shades of gray present in the storytelling. Everyone is losing something in the Lost Crown, and the stakes feel high for individual characters throughout the story. But it's the momentum that is lost because of the game's design. This map is gigantic, and when the map is this huge, and there is such an emphasis on backtracking, especially for a completionist to play through the game, plot stuff is naturally going to suffer as a result. That said, the lore of this game is fascinating, and it's extremely cool to see the myths and legends of ancient Persia told in this way. This game does for Middle Eastern lore kind of what God of War has done for Greek and Norse myths. Gods and legends are handled with care and attention, and feel larger than life in a great way. This game could function as kind of a reboot for 2D Prince of Persia games, and I'd be very interested in seeing Sargon or any other immortal or side character in a different story or context after this game. Even the music reflects the culture. The Iranian artist Mentrix composed the environmental music, and each track is a perfect representation of the area, infusing pieces like the Sacred Archives with a specific flavor. The developers also tapped Gareth Coker, who worked on other Ubisoft titles like Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope and Immortals Phoenix Rising to compose the boss tracks, and those tracks rule incredibly hard. Music and art direction are some of the biggest highlights in The Lost Crown. The environments are absolutely gorgeous, with one biome in particular really stealing the show here. The Raging Sea, an area all the way to the east of the map that you can reach about halfway or about 2/3 of the way through the game, depicts a fleet of ships going through a tumultuous lightning storm that is frozen in time. You can run across the water, zipping past pirates and warriors engaged in conflict, and try to avoid bloated, drowned zombies who try and bring you down to the depths. It's a stunning location, and honestly, I wanted this area a lot more. I wanted to play an entire game in this setting and location. Every second I spent in this area, I was awestruck. This was easily my favorite set piece or environment in the entire game. Each area has unique things about it, and you'll definitely get to know them all very well because there is a ton of backtracking to do. There are plenty of save points in the form of walk trees and many fast travel points. But by the end of the game, I was wishing that those two things were combined. When you're in cleanup mode trying to find those last couple collectibles and you're trying to move on from location to location efficiently, you really feel the weight of the map. I wouldn't mind the traversal so much if all the things I found felt as satisfying to collect as the Xerxes coins did. But like I said before, I didn't feel like every collectible was a reward. I either wanted cooler skins or more skins. Instead, we ended up with a medium amount of outfits for Sargon. I didn't feel this way all the time, but I definitely had moments where I started to question whether it was really worth it to go all the way across the map just for some gems. But what was worth doing as soon as I possibly could were the side quests. There are 9 NPC side quests throughout The Lost Crown, and each one is memorable and interesting. They all contribute to the completion experience in a seamless way by providing you with really good and useful rewards. The Lost Warrior side quest in particular is fantastic. Early on in your adventure, Sargon comes across one of his old enemies who begs Sargon to release his fellow brothers in arms from the curse of Mount Kaf. These 8 warriors are basically mini-bosses spread all over the map, and each one is a worthy battle with a consummate reward. Now, to me, it comes off that Ubisoft Montpellier understood the assignment. This game is very satisfying in so many key areas, but on the completion front, it definitely left something to be desired. I have a tendency to hyperfixate on certain aspects of games that I love. It's part of my personality, part of why I complete games in the first place. If I'm being extra critical of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, it's because it's inches away from being a true classic. It's still a pretty solid game, but fully completing it was a bit draining. Whether or not the rewards are worth the time cost is up to you. Obviously for me, I'm grateful that there were completion bonuses at all. If you're completing this on PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X or S, there's a trophy list or achievement list to contend with in addition to the in-game completion percentage. When I rolled credits on this game, I had about 97% completion and was missing 3 trophies, including the platinum. If you're already chasing completion, hitting trophies is pretty easy. You earn trophies for defeating each major boss and for hitting milestones like acquiring every amulet and fully upgrading your sword and bow. The only trophies I was really missing when I finished the story were combat related, but very easy to polish off. This is actually a fairly simple platinum to earn. It's reaching 100%, however, in the game's menu that can feel a little grindy. Just to recap, on top of the main quests, there are 9 side quests. In completing all 9 side quests, you'll naturally finish some other completion criteria. Notably, finding all 30 sand jars for the Prophecy of Mount Kaf side quest. All side quests reward the player with time crystals and other upgrade materials, as well as lore. There are 24 Soma tree petals, basically pieces of heart, either found as collectibles or gifted as rewards for certain side quests. There are also 6 Soma tree flowers, basically heart containers, which means if you complete this game, you'll have 15 health bars to deal with. A little more if you use an amulet. I loved collecting all the amulets, 37 total by the end of the game. I loved customizing my experience with said amulets. The fights in this game are already hype, and speccing out my Sargon by specializing in counters and melee combat made me feel awesome. Truly, any build is viable, and I love that the game doubles down on what that is. One thing I didn't notice until I'd already rolled credits is that upgrading amulets also contributes to the completion percentage. There was definitely a brief moment where I had every collectible in the game, uncovered every single blank spot on the map, and was still a few percentage points away of losing my mind. Until a couple upgrades later where I breathed a huge sigh of relief. The 57 lore collectibles and 5 unlockable outfits aren't actually needed for any trophies. The treasures are great, letters and missives from NPCs you never met, telling creepy stories or laying out the groundwork for backstory, children's toys, coins from defeated warriors. Basically, every single one of these helps make the world of the Lost Crown feel more and more believable and interesting. I love how many there are because it basically guarantees that the average player will come across at least a few that are interesting and hopefully make them want to find more. The outfits are... Alright, look, I love new skins in games. Sometimes a new skin is enough to warrant a whole new playthrough of a game. I'm not a big fan of the ones in the Lost Crown. That said, one of the rewards for finishing the game is a new costume. It's a classic completion bonus, even if I didn't necessarily love how it looked. You also get a few thousand extra time crystals for beating the game, which was very useful for me in upgrading the amulets that I hadn't yet gotten around to. Doing all this took me roughly 38 hours, which was much longer than I thought it would take me. This is the game that keeps on giving, but it doesn't always feel as rewarding as I had hoped it would. In the beginning, up through about 2/3 of the runtime, I thought it was exciting every time I entered a new area, but by the time I got to the end game, I found the map to feel a bit stretched thin. The best parts of the Lost Crown feel curated. Specific boss battles where it was like I was playing the most intense part of an anime fighting scene, or a platforming challenge that literally gave me sweaty palms. I really wish there was an unlockable challenge mode that had more platforming challenges to do, or even a boss rush just to see how far I've come. But the completionist blow definitely affected me by the end of the playthrough. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a classic finish-in. It does so many things exceptionally well, but stumbles just a bit when it comes to making the player feel compelled to do every possible thing. It's an easy platinum for PlayStation enthusiasts, but going for that 100% in-game completion didn't feel quite worth it in my opinion.
Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a fascinating look at what could be the future of Prince of Persia. I would like to see other games in this style, but more importantly, I think we just need to rebuild the Prince of Persia universe. It's been a long time since we've had a proper title, and this game, while very far from what the original could be, It's not a bad idea. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it. Thanks for watching, and see you around. Bye.